Start finishing up prayers, and we proceed with our Krishna book reading.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. That's too high. Namaste Narasimhaya.
Namaste Narasimhaya.
Prahlada chapter yesterday. We are continuing from the middle of the chapter number 46, was it?
I think it's, yeah, delivery of the message of Krishna to the Gopis. 46.
46.
Krishna, 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 Hey, Krishna, 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 Krishna,
Krishna,
Krishna, Krishna, Krishna,
Krishna, Krishna, Bahima,
Krishna, 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 Rakshama,
Rama
Rama
Rakshamam Krishna Keshava
Krishna
Keshava Pahi Mam.
Jai.
Yes.
We got there somehow or other.
Somehow or other.
Your mind's wonderfully absorbed in that filter. You've read this page?
Yes.
Good. Okay, great. That was quick. Okay.
We bring you closer so you can hear nicely. Okay.
Uddhava did not deliver to the Gopis the written message brought from Krishna, but he personally read it to them. The message was very gravely written, so that not only the Gopis but all the empiric philosophers might understand how pure love of God is intrinsically integrated with all the different energies of the Supreme Lord. From Vedic information, it is understood that the Supreme Lord has multi-energies, Parasya Shaktir Vivideva Shuryate. Also, the Gopis were such intimate personal friends of Krishna that while he was writing the message for them, he was moved and could not write distinctly. Uddhava, as a student of Brihaspati, had very sharp intelligence, so instead of handing over the written message, he thought it wise to read it personally and explain it to them. Uddhava continued, "These are the words of the personality of Godhead. My dear Gopis, my dear friends, please know that separation between ourselves is impossible at any time, at any place or under any circumstances, because I am all-pervading. This all-pervasiveness of Krishna is explained in Bhagavad Gita in both the 9th and 7th chapters. Krishna is all-pervasive in his impersonal feature. Everything rests in him. But he is not personally present everywhere. In the 7th chapter, it is also stated that the 5 gross elements, earth, water, fire, air and sky, and the 3 subtle elements, mind, intelligence and false ego, are all his inferior energies. But there is another superior energy which is called the living entity. The living entities are also directly part and parcel of Krishna. Therefore, Krishna is the source of both the material and the spiritual energies. He is always intermingled with everything as cause and effect. Not only the Gopis, but all living entities are always inseparably connected with Krishna in all circumstances. The Gopis, however, are perfectly and thoroughly in cognition of this relationship with Krishna, whereas the living entities under the spell of Maya are forgetful of Krishna and think themselves separate entities having no connection with him. Love of Krishna or Krishna consciousness is therefore the perfection of real knowledge in understanding things as they are. Our minds can never be vacant. The mind is constantly occupied with some kind of thought, and the subject matter of such thought cannot be outside the 8 elements of Krishna's energy. One who knows this philosophical aspect of all thoughts is actually a wise man, and he surrenders unto Krishna. The Gopis are the epitome of this perfectional stage of knowledge. They are not simple mental speculators.
Their minds are always in Krishna. The mind is nothing but the energy of Krishna. Actually, any person who can think, feel, act and will cannot be separated from Krishna. But the stage in which he can understand his eternal relationship is called Krishna Consciousness. The diseased condition in which he cannot understand his eternal relationship with Krishna is the contaminated stage or Maya. Since the Gopis are on the platform of pure transcendental knowledge, their minds are always filled with Krishna consciousness. For example, as there is no separation between fire and air, there is no separation between Krishna and the living entities. When the living entities forget Krishna, they are not in their normal condition. As for the Gopis, because they are always thinking of Krishna, they are on the absolute stage of perfection in knowledge. The so-called empiric philosophers sometimes think that the path of bhakti is meant for the less intelligent. But unless so-called man of knowledge comes to the platform of bhakti, his knowledge is certainly impure and imperfect. Actually, the stage of perfecting one's eternal relationship with Krishna is love in separation. But that is also illusory because there is no separation. The Gopis were not situated in that illusory condition of life. So, even from the philosophical point of view, for them there was no separation. The cosmic manifestation is also not separate from Krishna. Nothing is separate from me. The whole cosmic manifestation is resting on me and is not separate from me. Before the creation I was existing. Unquote. This is confirmed in the Vedic literature. Before creation there was only Narayana. There were no Brahma and no Shiva. Eko Narayana Asinna Brahma na Ishana. The whole cosmic manifestation is manipulated by the three modes of material nature. It is said that Brahma, the incarnation of the quality of passion, created this universe. But Brahma is the secondary creator. The original creator is Narayana. This is also confirmed by Shankaracharya. Narayana paro vyaktat. Narayana is transcendental, beyond this cosmic creation. Krishna creates, maintains, and annihilates the whole cosmic manifestation by expanding himself in different incarnations. Everything is Krishna, and everything depends on Krishna, but he is not perceived in the material energy, called Maya or illusion. In the spiritual energy, however, Krishna is perceived at every step, in all circumstances. This perfectional stage of understanding is presented by the Gopis.
As Krishna is always aloof from the cosmic manifestation, although it is completely dependent on him, so a living entity is also completely aloof from his material conditional life, although the material body has developed on the basis of spiritual existence. In the Bhagavad Gita, the whole cosmic manifestation is accepted as the mother of the living entities. And Krishna is the father. As the father impregnates the mother by injecting the living entity into the womb, in the living entity within the womb, Krishna injects all the living entities into the womb of material nature. They come out in different bodies according to their different fruitive activities. But in all circumstances, the living entity is aloof from this material conditional life. If we simply study our own bodies, we can understand how a living entity is always aloof from this bodily engagement. Every action of the body takes place by the interactions of the three modes of material nature. We can see at every moment many changes taking place in our bodies, but the spirit soul is aloof from all changes. One can neither create nor annihilate nor interfere with the actions of material nature. The living entity is therefore entrapped by the material body and conditioned in three stages, namely the awake, asleep, and unconscious. The mind acts throughout all three conditions of life. The living entity in his sleeping or dreaming condition sees something real, and when awake he sees the same thing as unreal. It is concluded therefore that under certain circumstances he accepts something as real and under other circumstances he accepts the same thing as unreal. These matters are the subject of study for empirical philosopher or the Sankhya yogi. To come to the right conclusion, the Sankhya yogis undergo severe austerities and penances. They practice control of the senses and renunciation. All these different ways of determining the ultimate goal of life are compared to rivers. Krishna is the ocean. As the rivers flow down toward the ocean, all attempts for knowledge flow toward Krishna. After many, many births of endeavour, when one actually comes to Krishna, he attains the perfectional stage. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, all are pursuing the path of realizing me, but those who have adopted courses without any bhakti find their endeavour very troublesome. Kleso diki kataras tesami. Krishna cannot be understood unless one comes to the point of bhakti. Three paths are enunciated in the Gita: Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, and Bhakti Yoga.
Those who are too addicted to fruitive activities are advised to perform actions which will bring them to bhakti. Those who are addicted to the frustration of empiric philosophy are also advised to act in such a way that they will realize bhakti. Karma yoga is different from ordinary karma, and jnana yoga is different from ordinary jnana. Ultimately, as stated by the Lord in the Bhagavad Gita, Bhaktya mam abhijanati. Only through execution of devotional service can one understand Krishna. The perfectional stage of devotional service was achieved by the Gopis because they did not care to know anything but Krishna. It is confirmed in the Vedas, Yasmin eva vikyate sarvam eva vikyatam bhavati. This means that simply by knowing Krishna, one automatically acquires all other knowledge. Krishna continued, quote, Transcendental knowledge of the Absolute is no longer necessary for you. You were accustomed to love me from the very beginning of your lives. Unquote. Knowledge of the Absolute Truth is specifically required for persons who want liberation from material existence. But one who has attained love for Krishna is already on the platform of liberation. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita, anyone engaged in unalloyed devotional service is to be considered situated on the transcendental platform of liberation. The Gopis did not actually feel any pangs of material existence, but they felt the separation of Krishna. Krishna therefore said, My dear Gopis, to increase your super excellent love for me, I have purposefully separated myself from you so that you may be in constant meditation on me. The Gopis are in the perfectional stage of meditation. Yogis are generally more fond of meditating on the executing devotional service to the Lord, but they do not know that the perfection of the yoga system is the attainment of devotion. This constant meditation on Krishna by the Gopis is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita to be the topmost yoga. Krishna knew very well the psychology of woman. When a woman's beloved is away, she thinks of him more in meditation than when he is present before her. Krishna wanted to teach through the behavior of the Gopis that one who is constantly in trance, like the Gopis, surely attains the lotus feet of Krishna. Lord Chaitanya taught people in general the method of Vipralamba Seva, which is the method of rendering service unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the feeling of separation. The 6 Goswamis also taught worship of Krishna in the feeling of the Gopis in separation.
Prayers of Srinivasacharya. About the Goswamis explain these matters very clearly. Srinivasacharya said that the Goswamis were always absorbed in the ocean of transcendental feelings, in the mood of the Gopis. When they lived in Vrindavan, they were searching for Krishna, crying, Where is Krishna? Where are the Gopis? Where are you, Srimati Radharani? They never said, We now have seen Radha and Krishna, and therefore our mission is fulfilled. Their mission remained always unfulfilled. They never met Radha and Krishna. At the time of the Rasa dance, these Gopis who could not join the Rasa Leela with Krishna gave up their bodies simply by thinking of him. Absorption in Krishna consciousness by feeling separation is just the quickest method for attainment of the lotus feet of Krishna. By the personal statement of Krishna, the Gopis were convinced about the strength of feelings of separation. They were actually experiencing the supernatural method of Krishna worship and were much relieved by understanding that Krishna was not far away from them, but always with them. The Gopis therefore received Rudaba very happily and began to speak as follows. We've heard that King Kamsa, who was always a source of trouble for the Yadu dynasty, has now been killed. This is good news for us. We hope, therefore, that the members of the Yadu dynasty are very happy in the association of Krishna, who can fulfill all the desires of his devotees. My dear Uddhava, kindly let us know whether Krishna sometimes thinks of us while in the midst of highly enlightened society girls in Mathura. We know that the women and girls in Mathura are not village women. They are enlightened and beautiful, and their bashful, smiling glances and other feminine features must be very pleasing to Krishna. We know very well that Krishna is always fond of the behavior of beautiful women. It seems, therefore, that he has been entrapped by the women of Mathura. My dear Uddhava, will you kindly let us know if Krishna sometimes remembers us? whilst in the midst of other women. Another gopi inquired, does he remember that night in the midst of the Kamunda flowers and moonlight when Vrindavan became exceedingly beautiful? Krishna was dancing with us and the atmosphere was surcharged with the sound of footbells. We exchanged pleasing conversation then. Does he remember that particular night? We remember that night and we feel separation. Separation. Remember that night when we feel separation.
Yes, that's right. Separation from Krishna makes us agitated, as if there were fire in our bodies. Does he propose to come back to Vrindavan to extinguish that fire, just as a cloud appears in the sky to extinguish a forest fire by its downpour? Another gopi said, quote, Krishna has killed his enemy, and he has victoriously achieved the kingdom of Kamsa. Maybe he is married with a king's daughter by this time and living happily among his kinsmen and family and friends. Therefore, why should he come to this village of Vrindavan? Unquote. Another gopi said, quote, Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the husband of the Goddess of Fortune, and he is self-sufficient. He has no business either with us, the girls in the Vrindavan forest, or with the city girls in Mathura. He is the great Supersoul. He has nothing to do with any of us, either here or there. Unquote. Another gopi said, it is an unreasonable hope for us to expect Krishna to come back to Vrindavan. We should try instead to be happy in disappointment. Even Pingala, the great prostitute, said that disappointment is the greatest pleasure. We all know these things, but it is very difficult for us to give up the expectation of Krishna's coming back. Who can forget a solitary conversation with Krishna, whose breast the Goddess of Fortune always remains, on whose breast the Goddess of Fortune always remains, in spite of Krishna's not desiring her? My dear Rudaba, Vrindavana is the land of rivers, forests and cows. Here the vibration of the flute was heard, and Krishna, along with his elder brother, Sri Balaram, enjoyed the atmosphere in our company. Thus the environment of Vrindavana constantly reminds us of Krishna and Balaram. The impressions of his footprints are on the land of Vrindavan, which is the residence of the Goddess of Fortune, and because of such signs we cannot forget Krishna. The Gopis further expressed that Vrindavan was still full of all opulence and good fortune. There was no scarcity or want in Vrindavana as far as material necessities were concerned. But in spite of such opulence, they could not forget Krishna and Balaram. We constantly remember various attractive features of beautiful Krishna, his walking, his smiling, his joking words. We have all become lost by the dealings of Krishna, and it is impossible for us to forget him. We always pray for him, exclaiming, Dear Lord, dear husband of the Goddess of Fortune, dear Lord of Vrindavana, and deliverer of the distressed devotees. We are now fallen and merged into an ocean of distress. Please, therefore, come back to Vrindavan
and deliver us from this pitiable condition. Uddhava minutely studied the transcendental abnormal condition of the gopis in separation from Krishna, and he thought it wise to repeat all the pastimes of Krishna over and over again. Materialistic persons are always burning in a blazing fire of material miseries. The gopis were burning in a transcendental blazing fire due to separation from Krishna. The blazing fire exasperating the gopis, however, is different from the fire of the material world. The gopis constantly want the association of Krishna, whereas the materialistic person constantly wants the advantage of material comforts. It is stated by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur that Krishna saved the cowherd boys from the blazing fire within a second, while their eyes were closed. Similarly, Uddhava advised the gopis that they could be saved from the fire of separation by closing their eyes and meditating on the activities of Krishna from the very beginning of their association with him. From the outside, the gopis could visualize all the pastimes of Krishna by hearing the descriptions of Uddhava, and from within they could remember these pastimes. From the instructions of Uddhava, the gopis could understand that Krishna was not separate from them. As they were constantly thinking of Krishna, Krishna was also thinking of them constantly in Mathura. Uddhava's message and instructions saved the gopis from immediate death, and the gopis acknowledged the benediction from Uddhava. Uddhava practically acted as the preceptor, spiritual master of the gopis, and they in return worshipped him as they would worship Krishna. It is recommended in authoritative scriptures that the spiritual master be worshipped on the level of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because of his being very confidential servitor, and it is accepted by great authorities that the spiritual master is the external manifestation of Krishna. The gopis were relieved from their transcendental burning condition by realizing that Krishna was with them. Internally, they remembered his association within their hearts, and externally, Uddhava helped them appreciate Krishna by conclusive instructions. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is described in the scriptures as adukshaja, which indicates that he is beyond the perception of all material senses. Although beyond the material senses, he is present in everyone's heart. At the same time, he was present everywhere by his all-pervasive feature as Brahman.
One more page. One can realize all the three transcendental features of the Absolute Truth: Bhagavan, the personality of Godhead; Paramatma, the localized Supersoul; and the all-pervasive Brahman, simply by studying the condition of the gopis in their meeting with Uddhava, as described by the Srimad Bhagavatam. It is said by Srinivasa Acharya that the 6 Goswamis were always merged in thoughts of the activities of the gopis. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has also recommended the gopis' method of worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead as super excellent. Srila Shukadeva Goswami has also recommended that anyone who hears from the right source about the dealings of the gopis with Krishna and who follows the instructions will be elevated to the topmost position of devotional service and be able to give up the lust of material enjoyment. All the gopis were solaced by the instructions of Uddhava, and they requested him to stay in Vrindavan for a few days more. Uddhava agreed to their proposal and stayed with them not only for a few days but for a few months. He always kept them engaged in thinking of the transcendental message of Krishna and his pastimes, and the gopis felt as if they were experiencing direct association with Krishna. While Uddhava remained in Vrindavan, the inhabitants enjoyed his association. As they discussed the activities of Krishna, the days passed just like moments. Vrindavana's natural atmosphere, with the presence of the river Yamuna, its nice orchards of trees decorated with various fruits, Govardhan Hill, caves, blooming flowers, all combined to inspire Uddhava to narrate Krishna's pastimes. The inhabitants enjoyed Uddhava's association in the same way as they enjoyed the association of Krishna. Uddhava was attracted by the attitude of the gopis because they were completely attached to Krishna, and he was inspired by the gopis' anxiety for Krishna. He began to offer them his respectful obeisances and composed songs in praise of their transcendental qualities as follows, quote, "Among all the living entities who have accepted the human form of life, the gopis are super excellently successful in their mission. Their thought is eternally absorbed in the lotus feet of Krishna. Great sages and saintly persons also try to be absorbed in meditation on the lotus feet of Krishna, who is Mukunda himself, the giver of liberation. But the gopis, having lovingly accepted the Lord, are automatically accustomed to this and do not depend on any yogic practice." Krishna book. Ki Jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki
Jai.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai. Very good.
Thanks for staying with us.
Hare Krishna.
You want to say something?
All glories to Srila Prabhupada, who presented these beautiful books for the Western people in the Western countries, and we should take advantage of them by reading them as much as we can throughout our lives. And the Krishna book is very special, and I think without going into too much detail, you can have amazing experiences in the Krishna book just by reading it regularly. And I can say also it helps with your japa as well. You read Krishna book at night, and then you know, if you're fortunate, you'll have dreams of Krishna, and also in your japa will be more focused the next morning, because your meditation, what you set yourself up with before you take rest, that will carry you through for the next day, and that's a really important thing to remember when we're actually endeavouring to chant japa effectively. Because what we do the night before, it will have an influence on us in the morning. So if we take rest in Krishna consciousness, we'll wake up in Krishna consciousness.
Nice.
Hare Krishna.
Wow, thank you for these nice, practical, deep realizations.
Thank you, friends.
Yes, let's all try to follow this advice. Hare Krishna.